Everyone who signed that contract should literally wake up every morning and if with the words John Mackey on their lips and the words Reggie White on their lips.
Yeah.
And if they don't wake up every morning realizing that John Mackey made this possible for you, then they need to read Turf Wars.
Hi there, and welcome into a brand new week of Celebrity Salute, dedicated to the men and women who serve our country in active duty, our veterans and their families. We're here for you. God bless you. We love you. On each episode, we look for people and stories with some connection to these heroes. I am Randy Miller.
DeMaurice Smith is the former executive director of the NFL Players Association, serving from 2009 to 2023. A seasoned attorney and labor leader, he was instrumental in securing key collective bargaining agreements and advancing player safety and rights. DeMaurice is now set to release his upcoming book, Turf Wars, which offers an unflinching look at the power struggles, politics, and behind-the-scenes battles that have shaped professional football and the broader world of sports labor as he's seen it through his eyes. We welcome DeMaurice Smith to Celebrity Salute.
And man, a great friend of the program is back with us here after a little time off. I mean, he's got a new book. Oh my gosh, DeMaurice Smith, 14-year tenure as executive director of the NFL Players Association, and his book is called Turf Wars, and it is explosive in a word. I mean, when you call the NFL an unregulated machine run by greedy billionaires to start, and it gets better from there. DeMaurice, how you doing?
I am fantastic. I'm even better. I'm joined with you. And,
oh, man.
It's good to be back. We had such a great couple of conversations over the years.
Yes.
And hit it off. Certainly love what you do and love your audience. So, man, I'm fantastic. I'm also not at the NFL Players Association anymore. So
right. Right. It's a good thing.
It's a good thing. I mean, I'm 22 pounds lighter. I don't drink Maalox every night. It's not all good.
Yeah.
You know, once we get to that point in our lives and our age, man, we're like, if we're not chugging Maalox, pretty good day.
And I would imagine you got a weight lifted off you. I mean, to be able to tell your story, and I love the subtext of this book, the fight for the soul of America's game. I love that. Yeah. I mean, but that's gotta feel very cathartic for you.
100%. And look, you come into a job like that as a sports fan on many levels. You know, sports was so important to me as a high school player. It was defining for me as a college athlete and framed literally, my entire college experience. You grow up in a place like Washington and you come out of the womb rooting for, John Riggins and
right.
Mark Mosley and Charlie Taylor and all those guys. And then you take a job at the NFLPA and, you realize very quickly, at least for me, that the only way to do the job was to stop being a fan of the game because I had to be a fan of the players.
Right.
And that's the soul of football. And I think what connects Americans every year around this time is, yes, you love the glitz and the glory and the fireworks and the bunting around the stadium. But what really connects Americans to football over generations is it's played by humans and you identify with them because, in some ways they're just like you. And it becomes a cultural center point. And to me, that's the soul of football.
Yep.
And that's the thing we have to kind of wrap our hands around, because if it just becomes this commoditized piece of entertainment that we allow people to manipulate for us, I think we lose something.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Former executive director of the NFL Players Association, his new book, Turf Wars. And it's a money machine, man. The NFL's a money machine. And, I mean, especially, I'm glad that we're talking today because Disney, Mickey Mouse just bought the NFL Network. So that's even more money. I mean.
Yeah, well, and even more, look, I think these things aren't aren't bad in and of themselves, because, there's one way of looking at this where, okay, they've got now a huge equity interest in a business partner.
Yep.
Like Disney. And one thing that could be very, very cool is that platform can deliver authentic stories about players and football and what it means in our communities, right? And that could be tremendous. The flip side, it could also just be more of a commoditization of things. And I think that we have this opportunity where fans can actually demand now, literally demand, stories that they want to hear that connect them with their sports and connect them with their icons. And that's what I hope. But I think it has to start with this appreciation about what is really the soul of America's sport. And Randy, that starts, for me, that started as a grade school kid. And Pop Warner football. And I kind of like that touch of it. I think whatever part of that makes me cry at a Friday Night Lights episode. I mean, I'm such a sap, but that's the kind of that's the soul of America's game that I wanted to try to talk about.
Well, and you pull no punches, man. I mean, I give you so much credit for, because it would have been, I think, pretty easy for you to just say, you know what, I'm gonna keep my mouth shut. I'm going to go on with my life. I did my time. They paid me well, and we're just fine and dandy. But you chose not to do that, and I admire that so much. Let's talk about some of these things you talk about in the book. I mean, you claim that it's basically between the owners, kind of a plantation-like situation with a bunch of old rich white guys. And I've never even thought about it that way, but I could see that.
Look, I kind of let the facts speak for themselves, and I wanted to, there's plenty of opinion pieces, and that's fine, but what I tried to do was take what actually happened. Mm-hmm. And here's the difference. Everybody can opine about what it must be like to sit down and bargain and fight with 31 billionaires. I've been there. And they do have this certain cultural and psychological profile that football is theirs.
Right.
And everyone else is just fortunate to be in that orbit. And that is something that if you spend time with them, even the good ones, can't help but kind of reminding you that this business is theirs. And when they deal with people, it smacks me as kind of a plantation mentality. When they deal with others, the most charitable way that I could characterize it is it's a country club mentality.
Yeah.
And when you think of it, the most rich and wealthy people in the world don't own NFL teams, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, they are actually excluded from the rarefied air of being owners, regardless of whether your last name is Zuckerberg and others.
Yeah, because they got to vote you into the club.
100%.
Yeah.
And they remind you every day that this is a vote or a non-vote into the club. And that's something that to me is culturally relevant and something that is an identifiable fact that means that the millions of people who love football, you rarely get a taste of that. Right. I mean, they do such a great job, I think, of kind of portraying themselves as this kind of wonderfully grandfather that you have that loves sports, and he bought a local rink or a local park in the town square, and they just put on football for the love of it. And by the way, they love that personification.
Well,
I'm sure happen to be true.
And they really are not accountable to anyone.
No, and that's one thing that in the 14, 15 years, or nearly 15 years that I ran the NFL Players Association, that I really found astounding when I would talk to people in a bar, because I did go to many of them in order to drown my sorrows while I was in the job. But, when people would talk about, well, I just don't understand why the NFL does this, or why doesn't the NFL do that, or all these issues that used to pop up, I would just remind people that this is next year it'll be roughly a $25 billion revenue generating machine next year, literally. Wow. And but this is an organization that has no 10Ks, no 10Qs, provides no audited financial statements.
Wow.
Has no SEC oversight, no Department of Justice oversight. As far as I can tell, I've never heard of a state attorney general exercising any jurisdiction over anything related to the National Football League. And therefore, they're accountable to no one.
Right. Right. We just do what we want. Hey, the new book is called Turf Wars. And you say in the book, you had a team owner refer to you and call you uppity.
That was crazy.
The situations that you were in, DeMaurice, I can't even imagine how much Maalox. I mean, you were put in so many different positions. I mean, your job was to defend the players. So when you get a situation like Deshaun Watson, and your job is to defend him. He was sued by more than 24 female massage therapists for sexual harassment and sexual assault. Now, he's denied it, settled 20 claims of misconduct. I mean, what do you do to kind of compartmentalize that for you?
Yeah, and maybe it's easy because I was a homicide prosecutor for a long time. I was a defense lawyer for a long time. I've been on both sides of the table. So from a lawyer standpoint, it's easy for me to compartmentalize because I have a duty to represent a union member.
Right.
And I don't represent them in their criminal cases or in their civil cases. I only represent them pursuant to the collective bargaining agreement that the other side signed. Mm-hmm. So the way that I always looked at it is the collective bargaining agreement is an agreement between two sides. And we decide what the rules are going to be between each other. And the other side agrees to a certain set of conditions, a certain set of rules. They buy into a certain set of laws that have been developed over the years. And on the other side, the players sign an agreement with them that they're going to engage in these rules in exchange for pay. Yeah. And it's literally that simple. So representing whether it was Deshaun Watson or Colin Kaepernick or Ray Rice or Tom Brady or Bounty, or I literally could go on for, I don't know, another 7 hours. Right. But representing all of those people was a job that I had in the context of the agreement that the owners signed. Mm-hmm. So my job is simply to hold them accountable to what they agreed to do. And the tough part about it is when you are trying to hold them accountable and you realize that they are literally accountable to no one other than the NFLPA.
Yeah.
Man, that's you talk about famous movie scenes about, you want me on that wall. There's players who want me on that wall.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
you were the only one on that wall.
You're the only one on that wall.
Right.
I'll never forget. Great. You have time for a 20-second story?
Absolutely.
I remember when the coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars decided one day to fine a player because he was late arriving at a OTA, an organized team activity, which is a off-season practice, which, by the way, is purely voluntary under our rules. Purely voluntary, and you don't get paid, right? Now, the players want to show up because they love football and they want to try to make their team better. So they, I think probably 95% of players show up for these voluntary free practices. This young man shows up late in Jacksonville, and the coach fines him for being late to the practice. Now, the idea of being fined to show up for a free voluntary practice.
Yeah.
is insane. And it also violates the collective bargaining agreement.
Right.
But here's the way the league deals with it. The young man gets fined, and you go to the league and you say, this is ridiculous. He can't be fined for a voluntary practice. And the league turns to you and says, sue us to get his money back.
You're kidding me.
No. No. And that's the National Football League.
and of course that's not going to happen.
Well, that's what we did. We sued him.
Oh, you did sue them?
Of course we did. Of course we did. We sued him, and we got his fine money back.
Wow.
But when you think about that, the league makes you go through those things. and yes, we probably spent more money than his actual fine amount.
Right.
But if we don't, what happens to the other 1,800 players?
Right. You set a precedent.
100%. And so
wow.
I don't have a hard time compartmentalizing my job, or compartmentalizing, when I had the job, of fighting for the players. I love football. That job requires that you love the players more.
Well, and back to Deshaun Watson for just a second, because every owner that I've ever heard talk about the kind of players they want a player of character. Well, after Deshaun Watson was out for one season, Cleveland signed him to a 5-year contract worth $230 million.
100%.
So what does that say?
I think there is a certain lore about football, and there's a certain mythology that grows up around football. And I think that very much of that mythology is false. And the mythology starts with a college coach that says, I'm out there to develop young men. I want to turn them into good young men. And there are certainly coaches out there who do that well and who want to do that. But you and I both know that there are some coaches on the college and pro level who want to win football games.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And at the expense of everyone.
At the expense of everyone. And so the book Turf Wars isn't designed to literally indict every football coach or every college coach or every coach on every level. But what Turf Wars is there to do is to kind of dispel this myth that they're all the same. And the reality is, you can look at college programs, you could look at programs, and you could say to yourself, hey, man, you know what? There's some coaches on these teams who sometimes are not great people.
Well,
and there's players.
It's a lot like, to me, when you find bad cops. Because when you
100%.
when you root out the bad cops, you know who celebrates that the most? The good cops.
100%. And look, as a homicide prosecutor for 10 years, prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office, man, I can tell you that there are some great officers to work with and some great detectives. But I can also tell you that there were some bad ones.
Right.
And I just refuse to take their cases. Because if I can't believe that they are truth tellers, I have this obligation to not put them on the witness stand.
Yeah. The new book is called Turf Wars. And you talk about some of these coaches. Let's talk about one of these coaches, John Gruden.
Yeah.
And John Gruden, by the way, was just handed I guess, a kind of a victory in court.
Yeah, a huge victory by the Nevada State Supreme Court.
That he can now sue the NFL for basically terminating him.
Yeah, well, they specifically ruled that Gruden was not bound by the arbitration clause in his coach's contract.
Yes.
Which, by the way, is one of the most fascinating chapters of how much power the NFL has and how unchecked that power is. When you think about when every team hires a head coach, that coach has to agree to an arbitration provision with the National Football League where Roger Goodell decides who the arbitrator is, and usually it's himself. So when you think about the paradigm that the players find themselves in, it is still much better than the one the coaches find themselves in.
Wow.
And that's literally the power they have. But John recently won that ruling. He's arguing that the NFL weaponized the emails against him. I mean, obviously, I had my own issue with John.
I want to ask you about that because I don't. You're a bigger man than I am. First, I'll just say that you're a bigger man than I am. So he comes out with a statement on an email calling me DeMaurice Smith has lips the size of Michelin tires that you talk about in the book. I mean, I don't care who you are, DeMaurice.
Yeah,
that had a sting.
It did. It did because, look, I mean, Randy, I would be lying to you if that was the first racist thing that someone ever said to me.
Sure.
In my life.
But this is somebody in your profession.
This is somebody in the profession and someone who's a professional. Right. And I literally had, I couldn't remember if I had met John before. I'm sure I had. I'm sure we'd seen each other on ESPN or seen each other on the field or something like that. But, I never had a cross word with John Gruden. I never had anything, negative or positive to say about him. I mean, we're in the same NFL orbit, right. But we're in the same NFL orbit of 1,800 players and, 300 coaches and anchors and television people. And I was sort of struck about how stupid, gratuitous, and comfortable.
Yeah.
It was to put this in an email. Mm-hmm. And by the way, Randy, another person on the email was somebody who I considered a friend.
Oh, man. Oh, boy.
And this was a guy that I would literally see almost every week whenever the Commanders played. And we had a cordial, friendly relationship with.
Wow.
And so it stung because, wait a minute, why is this so comfortable?
and why didn't my friend tell me about this?
100%.
Yeah.
And, the way I was raised, the way I was brought up, and I look back to, again, the defining people in my career. My high school coach was the first person that literally talked to us about there is the right thing to do. You're going to stand up for your friends. You're going to fight for your friends. And you're just going to literally treat everybody on your team like your brother. And when you hear that, when you're, whatever it is, 12 years old, it literally becomes, since it comes from a person that I think, cared about me and a person that held me to a very exacting high standard, that becomes literally a formative foundational principle in your life. And I look back on the 15 years that I was there, and, when a coach said something or a GM said something terrible about Michael Sam, for example, who was the first openly gay player to come into the National Football League, I blasted the general manager on public television because it's just a dishonorable thing to do, right? And if it was, obviously if it was people who were trying to stand up for their rights, I mean, I stood up and blasted the NFL for paying cheerleaders less than minimum wage. I don't represent either of those people. At the time, Michael Sam was going through the combine and he wasn't an NFL player yet. And cheerleaders certainly aren't a part of our union. But I felt it was important to stand up to the people who were blasting them, because that's my position and it's the honorable thing to do.
It was the honorable thing to do. Absolutely. And the other, I mean, you had to manage so many different crises. You talked about Kaepernick and Deflategate and Damar Hamlin's collapse, which that was fascinating to read in Turf Wars. You got a call, kind of walk us through that, if you will. You got a call during the game, right?
Yeah. So, DeMar unfortunately goes down. And Randy, I think I talk about it in the book. I had kind of stopped watching football for the most part. And
I can see why.
Yeah, it's a time where my guys are playing, and between you and me, when they're playing football, I know one thing: none of them are thinking about D. Smith. Right. So it's literally my day to not, just not think about them. We have procedures and policies, and I know that, thanks to a lot of the work that we did on trying to make football safer and making the game safer. But we sat down, my wife and I sat down on that night, watched the game. We saw him go down. And if you remember, what struck me more than anything else was, one, when they panned to the faces of the players, and you saw the havoc and the fear, and
absolutely,
the sadness and the terror,
you knew from their faces that there was something horrible. And then the second thing is, if you remember, it just went on for so long. Yes. And the players then go into the locker room. I get a call from a player in the locker room. He's terribly upset, and he says, there is no reason why we should be playing this game. But of course not.
Our coaches are telling us to warm up. They're talking about what's going to happen when we get back on the field. We got quarterbacks throwing the ball. And that's when I realized, this thing called the NFL slows and stops for no one.
Right.
And then obviously Roger and I had a conversation, and I made it clear to him that I thought the game should be over. And even in that moment, or those moments, this subtext of, you have a young man battling for his life on a football field, and at the same time, these conversations with both Roger and the player just bring out this subtext of just the sheer enormity of this business, the feeling that it holds itself accountable to no one, that the game must go on, and you just like, well, wait a minute. There's this humanity and soul of this whole thing.
Well, and you say in the book that his response to you, which is unbelievable to me, is when you said that we can't continue this game, the game should be stopped. He says to you, we don't know enough yet.
Right. And
hey, there's advertising dollars. There's advertising dollars here, D.
Well, and there's, Randy, I mean, like, at the end of the day, I honestly don't know if it's that, obviously that plays a role in all of this. Right. But I think what I found over my 14 years was that there's just this undercurrent that football will go on and it will go forward, and we will steamroll anybody who stands in our way. And it's not so much, someone sitting around thinking or trying to calculate, what are going to be the net losses from this, and how do we make up the game, and when do we reschedule? Right. It's simply this undercurrent, undercurrent's the wrong word. It's like a riptide that you get sucked into this thing, and people just believe that, well, it's the National Football League, and it just must persevere.
Well, and plus the other thing is, it's a message to you that, hey, you're not in control of this.
Oh, and they go out of their way to make sure that you appreciate that you're not in control. And it reminds me, I do talk about it in the book. I never met Gene Upshaw. Gene had passed before I took the job. But when I go into his office had basically been sealed since his death until the day I walked into it, which was weird.
That is weird.
on his desk was this manila folder, and on the back of it was this beautifully printed speech in Gene's handwriting. And I read it, and I don't know whether Gene ever gave the speech. I don't know when he wrote it. It wasn't dated, but I had it laminated, and it literally is on display at the NFLPA headquarters. But his entire speech is about how the NFL just wants to control you and everyone else in their
Wow. Wow.
And that's what I read day one. And
oh, boy.
Yeah, day one. And I didn't understand it because, you come with your own belief structures and,
Yeah, they may have treated Gene that way, but
100%.
Yeah.
And maybe that was whatever it is. Maybe that speech was from 90.
Right. Sure.
I don't know. But the longer that I stayed in the job, I realized that the league is more about control than anything else. And we talked about John Gruden. We're going to control him because we're going to have an arbitration clause.
Right.
You talk about Deshaun Watson. We're going to control him because somebody's either going to sign him or not sign him, and we're going to control whatever happens. Or Colin Kaepernick, we're going to control him. And you end up fighting against this pervasive desire by the owners on one hand to control you. And the flip side of it is this almost sometimes tacit compliance by the players that they're okay being controlled.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, listen, money does a lot of things. And
right.
I thought I found it fascinating in the book that you said that Roger Goodell, NFL commissioner, was deathly afraid of two things: afraid of being fired and afraid that a player would die on the field.
Yeah.
Wow.
And because I think in both of those scenarios, you lose control.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah. Right.
You lose control. And at the end of the day, that is literally what the NFL wants to do. They want to control everything. And look, I mean, I love the game, but man, and the players benefit from what I'm about to say. They get roughly 50% of the revenue that is generated in football, and that's great. Nobody should feel sorry for NFL players. I mean, think about it. They're a worker that gets 50 cents on every dollar they generate.
Well, thanks to you. Thanks to you.
Well, thanks to me and a bunch of other people.
Well, but I mean, seriously, I didn't understand the economics of it until I read your book and found out about all of that, how it works. But the collusion proponent of all of that you had to battle against. Man, that was some heavy lifting.
Malox, maybe you and I should do a show and get them as our next sponsor. I'll say it 15 times every half hour because
that's right.
it got me through. But yeah, it is this sense of control that really permeates it all. And you try to teach the players about, look, we have free agency. You think about the free agency fight, from John Mackey until Reggie White. I mean, that's 20 years of litigation. And the fight over free agency was simply a fight over the league didn't want to give up control.
Well, speaking of control, the collective bargaining agreement 2020, that's when the owners got to 17th game. Did you leave money on the table there?
No, I mean, I think quite the opposite. Again, we're going to date ourselves a little bit. I'm old enough to remember the 14-game season.
Sure. Oh yeah.
I'm sure there's people listening to this show who remember a 12-game season. But when the league went from 12, 14 to 16 games, remember they never increased the share of the player's share of revenue. Which simply means that players went from 12 games to 14 games to 16 games and didn't make more money.
Oh, wow.
Right? So, yes, revenue increased, but not your share of revenue. if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
It's like anything else, man. If I come to you and I say, hey, thanks for working, at the pizza parlor, and I know you work 5 days a week, and the boss comes in and says, hey, by the way, I've got this revolutionary idea. You're going to work 7 days a week. Well, are you going to increase my minimum wage? Well, no.
Yeah.
But
same money.
But you're going to get paid for the extra 2 days. Well, sure, you could say I'm making more money, but the reality is you're drastically increasing your level of work.
Right.
And your minimum wage is not being increased.
You're making more
right?
money for the pizza parlor.
Correct. Correct. So when the league went from 12 to 14 to 16, that literally was happening with every player working in the pizza parlor. So one of the big wins in 2011 was the players extinguished the league's unilateral right to add games. And at that time, they had the unilateral right to go up to, I think, 21 games. Think about it.
Wow.
They could do that without bargaining with the players at all.
Huh. Well, I'm surprised it didn't happen.
Well, a whole nother show could be what happened in 2011 because I have my theories. But in 2011, they locked us out and they wanted the players to give back 20% of their salaries. They wanted the players to play 2 extra games for free and take away the players' pensions. And that's the fight I walked into, and we could all decide that was not good. Not a good thing.
Well,
but the change was in 2011, we won the right to control our work, and the players won the right to veto any increase in games. So in 2020,
that's huge.
It's huge. So in 2020, the league does get their 17th game, but they buy that game for approximately $1.6 billion over 10 years.
Wow.
And that was a game they had for free in 2011.
I didn't realize a lot of things about the NFL. And even though Turf Wars is so explosive and so packed with some eye-opening things, it's actually a pretty hopeful book. I mean, you kind of make the case that the NFL could still be okay.
It could, and by the way, I think it can. I just think that, Lincoln talked about the better angels of our nature, right? And this idea that we can actually aspire to an NFL that's not a blood sport. We can aspire to an NFL that's inclusive, and we can aspire to all the great things that the NFL does and football does for America. But that has to start with this understanding and appreciation that we don't simply have to co-brand it, right? We have to just get out of this world where, we just decide that we're going to think about football in such a close-minded way of fans are going to go watch gladiators and players are going to think themselves as gladiators, and we're going to have this game, and if they get hurt, we're going to slow applause them as they limp off the field, and then we're going to stop thinking about them because there's some people we don't know. Yeah,
and when they retire, when they're out of the game, we don't care about them at all.
100%.
Yeah. And
at least football for me, again, my high school football coach will tell you that I likely was the worst football player he's ever seen in his life. Other than not getting, I didn't like getting hit. I didn't like getting dirty, and I hated playing in the rain. Other than that, I loved it.
You were all in.
All in. But, Randy, I think about my high school days, and you'll understand this for all the reasons I'm about to say. One of the schools in our conference was the high school on the Quantico Marine Base.
Oh, wow.
And we would play them twice a year. They'd play us at home, and they would beat us to death. And then we would go down to play them, and they would beat us to death when we were down there. But I will never forget being on a bus and driving into the Quantico Marine Base. And my father was a Marine, and he's 90 years old, and he still considers himself a Marine.
Oh, sure.
but there was something, magical is the wrong word. There was just something so special about driving into that Marine base and then playing football against kids whose parents were serving our country.
Right.
And how important that day was, or that night was, because you'd play the game, and yeah, we wanted to win the game, and we won some and lost some. But when you're looking on the sidelines and there's guys in military fatigues and moms in military fatigues cheering on their sons, man, there is something purely organic and beautiful and non-packaged and non-commoditized about that I truly believe is the soul of football. And that is what people need to spend time making sure is present in the NFL.
Well, I think you hit it right on the head, DeMaurice. I mean, it's either mission or money, right? And the mission of our active duty military and veterans that have served and then come back and transition out and serve again in some other capacity.
Yeah.
They just want to continue that mission. And that certainly is not what you feel from the NFL. You probably won't get any Christmas cards from Roger Goodell or Jerry Jones.
Yeah, I keep waiting, for the balloon bouquet. But I mean, maybe today.
Have you gotten any like serious flack?
Yes and no. I mean, I certainly hear through people that certain people aren't happy.
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But, what I tell those people is I looked over my contract, for the nearly 15 years I was there, and there really wasn't a clause in there about making them happy. So,
or telling the truth.
Right. And so, for me, look, I think one of the more interesting characters as they developed through the book was Roger. And I, before you and the audience throw proverbial, metaphorical stones at me, I think at the beginning, he and I are literally thrust into this relationship more by the acts of others than ourselves.
Right.
He's hired by the owners to be their warrior. I'm hired by the players to be their warrior. Mm-hmm. And that's how our relationship started. And certainly, over the years, we nicked each other up because that was our job. And he's at times a very tough, charitably person to deal with sometimes. And, but also I look at, when I started writing the book, he was a certain two-dimensional character. I think by the time I got to the end of the book that he was far more of a three-dimensional character.
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I'll never forget that night during COVID that he gave sort of an impromptu press conference from his house about how he believed the NFL got it wrong with Anthem and got it wrong on Colin Kaepernick and got it wrong on not, supporting the players' right to express their feelings and their beliefs. And I found that to be, Randy, incredibly courageous.
Did you find it to be authentic?
100%. 100%. And, I spent a lot of time trying to figure out Roger because he is a interesting character.
Right.
But, and I talk about it in the book. I mean, remember his father was a pro-civil rights, anti-Vietnam War senator who took over Bobby Kennedy's seat after he was assassinated.
I did not know that until the book. I did not know.
Yeah. And I consider his father to be one of the most courageous politicians in American history. I really do. And I found, we're lawyers, and at the end of the day, my wife and kids like to remind everybody that I'm mostly a dork.
Mine too.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly humbling, when you go home and everybody thinks, oh, my goodness, you got this great job. You're on the radio and you walk in the door and your kids look at you and they're like, how do you get through the day?
Right.
I mean, like,
what do you do, Dad?
What do you do? You probably mastered brushing your teeth and perhaps tying your shoes, but after that, you have no particular skill. But I fell into this rabbit hole about his dad, and he wrote one book in his life, and he's a Republican, and the only book he wrote was called "Political Prisoners in America."
Wow. Boy.
And yeah,
that had to be a long time ago.
Oh, it was. And by the way, the opening pages of the book, the dedication of the book is dedicated to a person who he refers to as a friend, and it's President Nixon.
Oh, wow.
So his dad, I believe, had this absolutely rock solid North Star principle
and morality
about what's the right thing to do, what's the right thing for our country. I'm going to speak truth to power. I'm going to do my best to hold people accountable. And the story about his father is, Nixon and Agnew absolutely crushed him. And he loses re-election for his Senate seat. And for me, I think I would have gotten along with his dad, and this idea that you put principle above everything and you kind of let the chips fall where they be. And so, you go back and you talk about turf wars, pulling no punches. Man, his dad pulled no punches.
Yeah. That's amazing to me, DeMaurice. And the other thing I've always taught my kids, and it used to be the case that because we're not overly political, but I've just always taught them, listen, never look at the person, just look at the issue. Look at what they say about the issue. I don't care, and it's the same message that we preach on this show all the time. I don't care about your politics, and don't need to, but we can all agree to support the troops. There's some things that we can just all agree to do.
Yeah. Well, look, our first conversation, if you remember, I came on your show and we had some people call in and we were responding to things that people typed in or sent or texted in. And we spent more time talking about the anthem and Colin Kaepernick.
Right.
And I just remember how, I was moved by a lot of the things that people in our military were talking about. And you could frame it where I think you'd agree with me. The overwhelming number of people, wrote in or called in and said, look, I can disagree about his politics, but I'm there to protect his right to say it. And I think that's where people like Charles Goodell and people in our history, whether, Rosa Parks and people who made a decision that they were simply going to be principled about something. Look, to me, that's the cool thing about, our country. That's the cool thing about the people who truly want to serve. Very few people wake up every morning with this idea that I'm going to be overtly political about X, Y, and Z.
I don't know.
Well, put it this way. I think the people who start their day with "let's light up Facebook" probably wake up that way.
Yeah, I agree.
But the people who serve our country, my parents were longtime government workers. The folks who, go to work every day and try to provide for their families, the people who are sitting around the dinner table trying to figure out, man, can we afford to send our kids to college? They aren't waking up every morning with, hey, man, what side of the political aisle am I going to think about today?
No. When do I go to the grocery store?
Right.
Yeah.
Can we afford it?
Right.
And so, I think I started writing Turf Wars with this idea that the worry and the concern was that on the inside of the NFL, it was, that the NFL somehow was like a microcosm of the divisiveness and the sort of the oligarch rule of America, and it was literally a microcosm of America. By the time I ended Turf Wars, I became nervous and hopeful. But the nervous came from, well, wait a minute, it just looks like America's turning into the way they run the NFL.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And the hopeful thing, man, is maybe, just maybe, we can wrestle this thing back, right? And maybe the NFL has more to do with America's love of sport and sacrifice and teamwork and courage and people willing to fight for each other. Hey, man, maybe we can wrestle it back and start, putting our arms around those things. Because I think that's truly what makes football great. I think that's what make America that's what make America great, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing that we can agree on, D, besides the troops, is that Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback in the world. That's the other thing we can agree on.
Hey, I'm losing your signal.
Listen, last question.
Yes, sir.
If you could hand this book to one current NFL player and tell them, read this before you sign your next contract, who would it be and why?
Wow.
I hate to put you on the spot, but
right. I would say anyone who is in that class of, young stars who have had great rookie seasons or a great rookie career, right? And they're about to sign their first free agent contract.
Yeah.
And that's a class of people because, to frame it, just to put it so crisply as I can, the league spent $4 billion on free agency this year.
Wow.
$4 billion just on free agent contracts.
Wow.
$2 billion of that was fully guaranteed.
Oh my gosh.
And everyone who signed that contract should literally wake up every morning and if with the words John Mackey on their lips and the words Reggie White on their lips.
Yeah.
And if they don't wake up every morning realizing that John Mackey made this possible for you, then they need to read Turf Wars.
It's a great book. DeMaurice Smith.
Thank you, brother.
Man, you did such a great job. It's always just so great to talk to you.
Well, I love talking to you, and man, I still think that you and I should take this thing on the road.
Me too.
I have a great time. I'm looking forward to hearing about your live shows on bases.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
But I think you and I don't know if I've ever talked to anyone that I was more comfortable with, who was more knowledgeable and who loved our country and our troops more than you.
Well, thank you.
And it's a pleasure. It's just a pleasure. And I would love to take it on the road with you.
Same here, man. Listen, best of luck with the book, and let's talk again soon.
You too. Take care.
You've been listening to Celebrity Salute. Celebrity Salute is produced by Brainstorm Media and distributed by National Defense Network, with host Randy Miller and executive produced by Nate Herron. Be sure to visit us at nationaldefensenetwork.com. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also say, Alexa, play the National Defense Network podcast.